Hey, it's time for Cleared to Play. Take you inside the tent, get you updated on the latest injuries in the Bay. Proud to partner with UCSF Health on this segment and bring in Professor of Orthopedic Surgery, Dr. Nirav Pandya. Hey, Doc, how you doing?
Doing good. Rough couple days for the Giants, though.
Yeah. You want to just go through the entire roster together, or should we pick a couple guys?
Yeah, maybe we'll stick with the main guys.
All right, so you translate for us. Jung Hoo Lee sees doctors. MRI results reveal structural damage. Second opinion with Dr. Neil Elatrash. Explain how this doesn't mean surgery and missing the rest of the year. We sort of gather that it likely does.
Yeah, all signs point to that. I mean, number one, whenever you're going down to see Dr. Elatrash, he's a surgeon. He's the one who takes care of, a lot of these athletes. So that obviously not a good news. And number two, when they say there is structural damage, that is concerning. Now, obviously, when a shoulder does dislocate out, there's going to be some degree of structural damage, particularly when that kind of humerus kind of pops out. You're going to get damage to the labrum and occasionally some bone. But really what determines whether you go down the surgery or non-surgery route is how bad that tear is, and also what position you play and what the risk of that popping out again is. Now, you could go down the non-operative route and say, look, you rehab for 5-6 weeks, see if you get back. But there's a risk of that shoulder popping back out, and we saw that happen with Fernando Tatis. Kept popping out, then he got surgery. This may be one of those cases where, like, look, we need to get this fixed, make sure it gets better so you'll be back for next season. So a lot of different variables go into play, but doesn't sound very promising based on this initial report.
If the labrum is at all torn, is there any way that can heal itself on its own, or is that going to be surgery no matter what the timetable is for doing it now or in the off season?
Sometimes what can happen is that labral tear can be small enough where even if it doesn't heal, you're not going to have a risk of the shoulder popping back out. So the example we like to use, Stephen Curry last year had that shoulder, quote unquote, subluxation where they reported he had a labral tear, but probably it was not big enough to cause the shoulder to be unstable. Now, obviously, when you have a dislocation and it's high energy, kind of like Lee had, you worry that labral tear is going to be so big that even if it doesn't heal, or even if it heals a little bit, the shoulder is still going to be unstable. So a lot of it's based on the size of the tear, but yes, the labrum will not heal on its own. It's just, is it big enough that it's going to cause the shoulder to be unstable? And obviously surgery is more predictable in terms of making that shoulder, preventing that shoulder from popping back out. Okay,
so Doc, I just want to make sure I understand correctly. If he gets surgery, does that pretty much remove the long-term future concerns?
It definitely decreases it. We usually tell people, like, if you've had a shoulder dislocation and you go down the route of not getting surgery, that risk of it popping out could be 25 to 30% again. If you get surgery, the risk of dislocation goes down to 2 to 3%. So drastically decreases that risk, particularly for an athlete who's not, although running into a wall as a collision athlete, like you worry for baseball players that risk isn't as high as, say, a football player. So absolutely, it decreases that risk significantly. Obviously, the shoulder is never completely the same after this happens, but it can get to the point where a baseball player can play again after surgery without having to really worry about that unless there was some sort of violent impact again.
Does the fact that he plays center field affect the decision in some way based on the range of motion that he needs to have playing the outfield?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And one of the things you worry about, and this is why you don't hear baseball players get shoulder surgery a lot, is that after you operate it on a shoulder, there's always that risk that the mechanics of the shoulder can sometimes be impacted. Now, one of the goals of surgery is you want to get the shoulder to be tighter so it doesn't pop out again, but you lose some of that mobility, particularly raising your arm over the head. So if you're a center fielder, that may change a little bit in terms of your decision to have surgery, as well as how aggressive you are in terms of tightening that shoulder up, because you need to be able to get your arm up and behind your head to be able to make those catches. So obviously does play a role for an outfielder. For an infielder, it wouldn't be as big of an issue. Now, obviously for a pitcher, if it's their throwing arm, you definitely don't want to go down that route of getting it fixed because it can tighten things up and you don't have that same velocity. So a lot of considerations do go into based on your position and kind of what you need to use your arm for based on where you are in the field.
Okay, multiple choice. You want to talk Soler, Ahmed, Conforto, Blake Snell, Patrick Bailey. Who do you want to talk about next, Doc?
Let's go with Snell because he might start on Friday. Let's go Blake Snell.
All right, tell us about Blake Snell.
So it sounds like he had a good rehab start and potentially could be pitching on Friday. I think the key with these adductors is that the adductor muscles do help to stabilize the lower half of the body. It's part of that core. So one of the things you do worry about is not necessarily is the adductor going to get re-injured again, but if there's not that endurance in the muscle or if there's still some soreness, is that going to then translate to you pitching a little bit differently, and are you going to get shoulder and elbow soreness? So I'm less worried about this adductor kind of flaring up again, but does it potentially mean that he pitches 2 or 3 innings the first time because you don't have that endurance in that muscle and you don't want mechanics to start breaking down? So the fact that he's pitching means that injury is probably healed. The question is there going to be any residual soreness or any slight little changes in mechanics that would be a worry for upper body issues? But it sounds like they've been very cautious with this. He's dealt with this before. So hopefully this means we're seeing a healthy Blake Snell that's going to have a good performance the rest of the season.
Doc, great to have you right after the Jung Hoo Lee news. Thank you so much as always.
Absolutely. Anytime, guys.
All right, there it is. Dr. P, the proceeding was sponsored by UCSF.